Belfast City Council is launching a series of new initiatives to celebrate the city's rich literary heritage. Literary tourism contributes up to nearly Linda LaPlante speaking to me earlier. Her new novel, Bloodline, is published by Simon & Schuster. We'll follow that. Belfast City Council is launching a series of new initiatives to celebrate the city's rich literary heritage. Literary tourism contributes up to nearly £3 billion a year to the British economy, apparently, and the council wants some of that action. Among the products being developed is a new Literary Belfast iPhone app, Belfast Through Writers' Eyes, with video guides to the city and their work from 14 writers, including Seamus Heaney, Michael Longley, Paul Muldoon, Mary Jones, Patricia Craig, Glenn Patterson and Bernard McLafferty. Other developments include the Belfast Poets and Writers Exhibition and BBC Literary Archive at the City Hall, and a new website, literarybelfast.org. Well, it's not very often that we allow a guest to keep his phone on in studio, but we have to see this literary app in action. Dr. Eamonn Hughes is a senior lecturer at the School of English at Queen's, no stranger to this programme, but he's provided the content for the exhibition, the app and the website, and sits on Belfast City Council's Literary Tourism Steering Group. We'll chat in a moment, but first, here's Seamus Heaney talking about his relationship with Belfast.
Belfast is a place I learned a lot about writing. I learned about the community of writers in the past, where I made new friends in the 60s after the university, at the university indeed, with Stuart Parker and John Hamilton, and then with later on when I was teaching in Ballymurphy and the training college up in Andersonstown. I met and got very associated with Philip Hobsbawm, who was a teacher in Queen's University and founded the group, quite a famous group now. When it comes to writers from Belfast, I mean, I've known a lot of them and have got nurture and friendship from a lot of them, but in the beginning, I think that and in the end, I would have to say that Michael McLafferty, who was the headmaster of the school where I began to teach in Belfast in the early 60s, Michael McLafferty was also a writer of classic short stories, a novelist whose first novel and second novel, I think, Call My Brother Back and Lost Fields, are beautiful pastoral books about Ulster. McLafferty is in my affections and in my gratitude. This is a poem called Linen Town, and it says High Street, Belfast, 1786. It's basically a response to a print of that moment, which is probably here in the Linen Hall Library. It's 20 to 4 by the public clock. A cloaked rider clops off into an entry, coming perhaps from the Linen Hall or Corn Market, where the civic print unfrozen. In 12 years' time, they hanged young McCracken. This low-necked bell and tricorn fop still flourish, undisturbed by the swinging tongue of his body. Pen and ink, water tint, fence and fetch us in, under bracketed tavern signs, the edge gloom of arcades. It's 20 to 4, on one of the last afternoons of reasonable light. Smell the tidal lagan. Take a last turn in the tang of possibility.
Seamus Heaney reading his poem Linen Town. Eamonn, welcome. It is I've been looking at it on the website. I haven't quite got to the downloading of the app yet, but it really is a very broad sweep of this city, from David Park on the Titanic Quarter, Owen McCafferty on Joy's Entry, Bernard McLafferty, Belfast Public Library, Sinead Morrissey on Queen's. Did the sense of place, was that as important as the writers themselves?
It was absolutely crucial. I mean, part of what we were thinking of when we started to talk about this was just the whole idea of, obviously, an introduction to Literary Belfast, and we were thinking about that notion of a walking tour. And if you're going to direct people to somewhere because it's got associations with a writer, the idea really was, why not have the writer there?
Okay, so
do an interview with them, get them to talk about it.
So let me see the app there. You've got it. You've got it open at the moment. So you basically just explain it to me. So number 10, what's that?
So I mean, we have a standard Google map here, and if you flick any of the markers on it, then number 10 comes up as Inst, and that's Michael Longley.
That Michael Longley there,
standing outside Inst.
Yeah.
So then the app, obviously the writer talks a bit about themselves, talks a bit about where they are and the importance of that place, does, as you just heard Seamus Heaney do there, a reading from their own work. And we also asked them to talk about some influences of other Belfast writers. So there is a very, very broad sweep. I mean, you get to a particular place and there's just a whole range of associations and networks and so on that come out. And I mean, the thing that struck me is the writers were incredibly generous, both in agreeing to do this and also incredibly generous in talking, as, say, Seamus Heaney did there about Michael McClafferty, for instance, talking about their influences, talking about what the place and its people and its writers have meant to them.
Because they're not here. They can't talk about it. You've also got a sense of the heritage of C.S. Lewis and other writers too. I mean, Paul Muldoon is outside the BBC, not right now, but he was filmed outside the BBC talking, and he has a great quote saying that Dylan Thomas said that most young men went to see others go to the BBC. I think I'm paraphrasing it, but and talked about following in the footsteps of Louis MacNeice. So as well as you asking people to follow the footsteps of the app, there is that real sense of history too on it.
Yes, and I mean that each place that somebody will go and stand and say watch this or listen to the audio, they will get that sense, not just that somebody's told them that this is important to a writer. They get the writer talking about why it's important and talking about its associations and talking about all of those kinds of things. And we hope we kind of guide people around Belfast in a reasonably gentle and kind of amiable and generous way and hospitable way as well. And I think that sense then of Belfast as having these literary landmarks all over the place. I mean, that notion that as you walk a city, it's not a strange place to you because, almost at every street corner, you switch on the app, there's somebody to welcome you and tell you something about it.
It's interesting because in a way, I mean, you lecture in English and you're knowledgeable about the Irish writers, many of whom are still with us. So, we all know their work and their connections with this place. But it's the technology, isn't it, that has allowed this to happen in a way. This technology makes the work more intimate.
Yes, I think so, because as I say, you can have it either in the audio version on the app, or you can download a video and actually watch the writer do it. And I mean, it's interesting as well because it's technology and I think a really interesting and constructive kind of collaboration, because the Belfast Council, and particularly the Tourist Development Office, are sort of behind this. We've got the School of English at Queen's, the Seamus Heaney Centre at Queen's, a local company, Film Trip, are the people who were the tech people who made all of this possible. And they
beautifully
really
filmed by David Barker as well.
Absolutely so, who took real pains to get this right. For us, and then Culture NI as well are involved in it, and indeed the BBC with its own long, rich literary heritage, as you mentioned with Muldoon.
But it's interesting because they're talking about literary tourism contributing up to £2.6 billion a year. The cynical ones would say, well, he's just jumping on the bandwagon, and the others would say, well, why not?
Well, to some extent, yes, I suppose that is true. But I don't think that anybody can necessarily be cynical, about the the future health of the economy and society of this place. And this is certainly one of those areas that we do have to look to. And as I say, that kind of collaboration between private sector, public sector, university, all of those sorts of things. I mean, that itself seems to me to be a kind of imaginative and interesting kind of collaboration to get ourselves up and running with.
Is it going to bring people to these writers' work? Okay, Heaney aside, I mean, he's shipping books out by the lorry load, but for the other writers, maybe the lesser known writers, will such an app make people go, I have wouldn't mind actually reading his work. Is that the?
I mean, I'd hope actually for a virtuous circle in this. I mean, obviously Heaney is the best known, but I mean, one of the things that because we live here and take it for granted, we can overlook about Belfast is that at least part of its reputation, among many others, it has to be said, but at least part of its reputation is actually as a real centre of literature, and a number of people come here aware of some of that literature, and possibly looking for an introduction to more, and in turn then being introduced to other people.
Should other cities do it in Northern Ireland? Derry, Lisburn. I mean, are other towns? Should they have a piece of the app too?
Well, I mean, there are various arguments you can make about that. I mean, the book festival tonight, I'm going to be introducing Maurice Leach, and I know that one of the things I'll be saying about him is that when he started out, there was actually a very strong County Antrim school of fiction, which we tend to forget these days. So that's certainly a possibility. But I think for the moment, I mean, we'll give Belfast its pride of place, at least for the moment anyway.
Thank you so much. You can download it. Anybody who's got an iPhone will know all the wheres and ways and wherefores and whatever of getting it. You can also find out all the details on the website, which is literarybelfast.org. Thank you very much, Eamonn Hughes.
Thank you.